And Dave, tell me again, you talked about the type of music that you guys are introducing that is easily accepted by children, students. And some music educators, I guess purists might say, why aren't you teaching jazz or classical or something as a foundation? But you guys really have a specific reason for going after rock to make it more accessible to more kids. And tell me about that concept.
Well, I mean, I think the clearest way that I can make the point is to take it actually out of the realm of music. And because what we're really talking about is genres.
Yeah.
And what's important is not a genre. What's important is, like, if I say a genre, it's like a genre of what? Of literature, of film, of painting. The genre is not important. The art is what's important. And
right.
Music is the art, obviously, that we're discussing. As a school teacher, it's sort of like I would read children, The Cat in the Hat and Dr. Seuss books. Now, I felt it was a really great thing to do for them. Why? Because it was fun, they liked it, it was easy, it taught them a love of literature at an early age.
Right.
Now, I don't go to bed at night and think to myself, gosh, I taught those kids to read with Dr. Seuss, and now I've consigned them to a lifetime of reading only rhyming books. What happens? We're humans. We grow, we develop.
Yeah.
And the critical thing is that you jump on the train.
Right.
If you do not get on board that train, you're left at the station. And so teaching rock and roll is not an end, it's a means.
Right.
Teaching rap or hip-hop or funk or blues, to me, it's immaterial. What's critical is that children get instruments in their hands and learn that thrill that comes from having a creative outlet, a way to express themselves. And children, and I think that this speaks to everyone, who cares about children, and it's just sort of, you can see it's true on the face of it, or at least I feel that way,
yeah.
that a child who's given creative outlets and an opportunity to express themselves creatively is going to be infinitely less attracted to the cheap thrill of destructive behaviors.
Right.
You can smash a mailbox, but it is not a really great way to build your self-esteem.
Sure.
It is definitely a rush and may give you some sense of power, but that's transient. But if you actually build something with your own two hands and your own imagination, that is something to build a lifetime on, and build confidence and self-esteem. And that's why our program focuses so much not just on playing pop music, but composing it.
Right.
And if you think of music, it's sort of alone in the public school system as an art form that's not iterative. And what do I mean by that? Meaning that the children don't come up with their own iterations. They don't write their own things. Like you go into art class, what do you expect to see? Kids are doing their own drawings and their paintings,
right.
Or sculptures or what have you. In language arts class, they're writing their own essays or poems or what have you. Well, what's notoriously absent? Well, where's the music?
Right.
Not just hot cross buns, but where's the music over which the children have authorship?
Right.
And what I think, my feeling is that unless there's an idiosyncratic and visionary teacher at that school, or any teacher that happens to have been trained by Little Kids Rock, the answer is likely nowhere.
Yeah.
And that's really why I say Little Kids Rock is essentially a teacher-conceived, teacher-led educational reform movement. Our goal is to restore and revitalize music education in our nation's schools and transform children's lives in so doing.
Yeah, and like you said, Dave, I'm saddened like you when I talk to people who are adults who say, I started a musical instrument, or I didn't stick with it, or I never took it up, and I really regret it, because you know how easy it is to get good enough at an instrument to become functional and really enjoy music. Yeah,
and it's a terrible shame that so many people do not make it over that little minimum threshold.
Right.
And what an unfortunate standard to have, which is often implicit. I mean, it's not stated like, okay, you shall get music education, but only in a form that's going to prepare you for post-secondary, graduate level, first chair, or second or third in an orchestra.
Right.
The world of music is much, much broader than that.
Right.
We do not put those kinds of prescriptive limits around any other form of education. I mean, you go through 10 years of school, compulsory education, and you learn to do math. Now, do you learn calculus? Perhaps not, but you should be able to pay the tip on your bill. You should be able to, manage your household,
right.
Economics and do a budget, etc. And you can use math for meaning in your life without a doctorate in the subject, without performing at a college level. But I think that sometimes in traditional, more traditionally oriented music paths, the end isn't that the child should play, although it's often stated that that's what the end is. The end is really the child should be able to sight read notation and play either in a big band, jazz situation, or sight reading jazz session player, or as part of an orchestra.
Right.
And those are very lofty things and wonderful things. And obviously, I have no problems with that. But what about the rest of us?
Right.
That appeals to a certain percentage of the population. And, last I checked, America is a democracy. And we kind of get to make all these great decisions about how we want to spend our time. And I think that there is a lot of wisdom in a student-centered approach to education.
Yeah.
And last thing on that note is that once you've turned a child into a musician, and that to me is someone who can actually play an instrument and play songs for pleasure,
right,
they'll never listen to music the same way again.
Sure.
What does that mean? They'll never listen to jazz the same way again. What may have seemed alien and foreign and alienating, when they listen to it now as a player, or when they see it now as a player, it may come across quite differently. It may come across as mind-boggling,
right,
and aspirational, and inspirational. Likewise with classical. But if you don't play, very difficult to understand the mechanics of what's going on. You can be watching Michael Jordan, and if you've never watched a basketball game before, and if you don't know how to play, you have no idea what you're looking at,
right,
and the incredible level of skill and required, etc. And that's because you're you're locked out of the athletic world.
Right.
Well, likewise with music. And so again, to me, extending the franchise happens by having children actually become musicians, and that is the real end. What they do with that, whether they choose to be professional or not, or go on, and et cetera, that's up to them, just the way it is for every other field of study in the public schools.
Yeah, and like you say, there are a host of great jazz musicians who start out in rock, and as you said, as they aspire to get better and really understand the music, they just move to other genres. Dave, tell me about, again, the structure of the program. I know you guys have about 16 or 17 chapters, if I remember correctly, and but you are targeting your resources at schools where they're really in need, correct? Yeah,
we're actually in 18 different cities, and we go to cities where the majority of students, 50% or more, participate in the free and reduced lunch program, which is a mandated federal statistic. So you can kind of get a sense. And essentially, for those of people who are not familiar with that kind of vernacular, basically you're talking about low-income schools. So so we go into districts like New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, Tampa, Houston, Shreveport, Louisiana, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and a number of other places. And we'll typically recruit a group of 30 or 40 school teachers, train them how to use our curriculum and methodology, certify them, and then place them back in their schools. Now, this differs greatly from, say, a visiting artist model. A visiting artist model is really nice, for the time that artist is there.
Yeah.
But when the artist leaves, there's no infrastructure or capacity that's left in their wake, often.
Right.
And this is not to denigrate those programs. I think they're fabulous. However, one of the things that I find so appealing about Little Kids Rock is we leverage the human capital of the schools, the teachers, and we turn them into their own best resources. And we give them a methodology that gets results, and also a peer group, because our teachers from around the country are actually in touch with one another. It's sort of like, again, in a sense, a little bit of a social movement. We have a social networking site where all of our teachers can share ideas and lesson plans, in addition to getting the latest and greatest out of, sort of Little Kids Rock's home office.
Right.
And so, it's just a really exciting, well, I find it very exciting.
I'm sure you do.